War is coming. But this time, it's not just across the ocean. It's coming for the Dutton Ranch. And in 1944, the battlefield won't only be in Europe, it will be right here in Montana. The Yellowstone legacy is about to face its darkest test yet. Yellowstone 1944 takes us into a world that is already burning. The year is 1944. The Second World War is at its peak. Young men are being sent overseas, families are holding their breath, and the American dream feels fragile. But while the world fights on foreign soil, the Dutton family faces a different kind of war, one that threatens their land, their bloodline, and everything their ancestors fought to protect. Spencer Dutton is no longer the reckless young man we once knew. Time has hardened him, loss has shaped him, he has seen love, and he has buried it. By 1944, he is older, quieter, and far more dangerous. Elsa's narration once told us that Spencer lived until 1969 and never remarried after Alex's death. That single detail changes everything. It tells us that whatever happens in 1944, it does not end with a fairy tale romance. It ends with sacrifice. Spencer now stands as the head of the ranch, carrying the weight of generations before him. Jacob and Kara are gone. Their absence is not just emotional, it is structural. The ranch has lost its pillars, and without them, the responsibility falls entirely on Spencer's shoulders. He must protect the land, manage the business, and raise his son in a world that is preparing him for war. Yes, Spencer has a son, a young man now in his early 20s, strong, proud, and eager to prove himself. He grew up hearing stories about courage and survival. He knows his father fought in a war once. He knows the Dutton name stands for strength. And now, as the Normandy landings approach, he feels the pull to serve his country. This is where the emotional conflict begins. Spencer understands war better than anyone. He knows it does not create heroes. It creates ghosts. He sees the same fire in his son's eyes that he once had. But this time, he is not the one riding into battle. He is the father watching his child walk toward it. Meanwhile, back in Montana, the ranch is vulnerable. With so many young men leaving for war, landowners across the state are struggling. Labor is short. Enemies grow bold. Wealthy investors see opportunity in weakness. And Yellowstone Ranch, the largest and most valuable land in the region, becomes a target once again. But the threat is not just financial. There are whispers in town, rumors of powerful businessmen trying to pressure struggling ranchers into selling. The war has created demand: beef, horses, land for development. And some people are willing to take what they want by force, especially when they believe the Duttons are no longer strong enough to fight back. They are wrong. Spencer may be older, but he is still a predator when provoked. The calm in his eyes hides calculation. He does not shout. He does not panic. He watches. He waits. And when he strikes, he finishes it. Yet this season is not only about Spencer, it is about the new Dutton generation. Elizabeth's child, Jack's legacy, would also now be in their early 20s. If Elizabeth returns to Montana, as many believe she will, her presence changes the entire power dynamic. The ranch would once again have a matriarch figure. Not as fierce as Kara, perhaps, but strong in a quieter way. Intelligent, protective, determined. If both young men grow up together, they are not rivals. They are brothers in everything but blood. They share the same land, the same last name, and the same pressure. And in 1944, they may share the same battlefield. Imagine the tension inside the Dutton home as war letters arrive, as radios broadcast news from Europe, as every knock on the door could mean tragedy. The beauty of Yellowstone has always been about legacy, what fathers pass down to sons. In 1883, it was survival. In 1923, it was expansion. In 1944, it becomes preservation. Because the greatest threat is not losing a fight. It is losing the next generation. And that is what makes this chapter so powerful. For the first time, Spencer is not just fighting for land. He is fighting for the future of his bloodline. Every decision he makes carries long-term consequences. If he becomes too harsh, he risks pushing his son away. If he becomes too soft, he risks losing the ranch. The emotional weight of this era cannot be ignored. America in 1944 is united in war, but divided in fear. Women are stepping into roles they were never allowed before. Businesses are changing, society is shifting, and the Dutton family must adapt or be left behind. This is not just another prequel, this is the bridge between generations, the missing link between Spencer's era and the modern Yellowstone we know. And if the official trailer gives us even a glimpse of this tension, a hardened Spencer, a determined young Dutton heading to war, and enemies circling the ranch, then 1944 may become the most emotionally intense chapter of the entire saga. Because war changes men, but land changes families. And in 1944, both forces collide. Because 1944 is not only about soldiers and enemies, it is about secrets. And one secret in particular could change how we see Spencer Dutton forever. Elsa once told us something that refuses to stay quiet. Spencer had a son with a widow, not a wife, a widow. And he never remarried. That single detail carries tension, mystery, and emotional weight. By 1944, this woman is part of the Dutton story whether people like it or not. The question is not whether she exists. The question is who she is, and what she means to Spencer. Spencer is a man shaped by loss. Alex was not just his wife, she was his fire, his chaos, his love. If he never remarried after her death, then whatever happened with this widow was complicated. It was not a fairy tale, it was not a grand romance. It was something quieter, something heavy. Maybe she was someone who lost her husband in war. Maybe she arrived in Montana with nothing but grief and survival instinct. Maybe she and Spencer found comfort in shared loneliness rather than passion. Two broken people standing in the same silence. But here's where the real tension builds. What does this mean for the ranch? If Elizabeth returns to Montana, older, wiser, carrying Jack's legacy, then the emotional balance becomes fragile. She represents the past, the lawful Dutton line, the memory of Jacob and Kara, the structure. The widow represents something else, a chapter that was never meant to become public, a relationship built in shadows, a child born from circumstances rather than ceremony. And children, in the Yellowstone universe, are never just children. They are heirs. By 1944, Spencer's firstborn and the son he had with the widow would both be young men, close in age, strong-willed, raised under the same sky but possibly under different truths. Do they know they are brothers? Or does one of them grow up believing he stands alone? If the truth has been hidden, imagine the explosion when it comes out. Imagine a young Dutton discovering that his father's past is more complicated than he was told, that loyalty and honor are not always clean. Spencer is not a liar, but he is a protector. And sometimes protection requires silence. The emotional core of this section is simple. Legacy is messy. The Dutton name carries power, but it also carries secrets. And secrets in Yellowstone never stay buried forever. They surface. And when they do, they destroy everything in their path. Now place this tension inside a wartime America, one son preparing to leave for Europe, another questioning his place at home, a widow whose presence may not be fully accepted by the community, and Elizabeth potentially returning to restore order. Montana in 1944 is traditional, judgmental, unforgiving. A woman connected to Spencer without marriage would face whispers, cold stares, doubt. And Spencer, he would not tolerate disrespect. Not from townspeople, not from businessmen, not from anyone. But even the strongest man cannot silence emotional conflict inside his own house. This is where Yellowstone 1944 becomes more than a land drama. It becomes a family pressure cooker. Spencer must decide what kind of father he wants to be. Does he treat both sons equally? Does he protect the younger one differently? Does guilt shape his decisions? Because if one son believes he carries the true Dutton legacy, while the other feels like an outsider, rivalry becomes inevitable. And rivalry inside the Dutton bloodline is far more dangerous than enemies outside the fence. At the same time, powerful outsiders are watching. Investors, developers, maybe even political figures who see instability in the Dutton family. A divided house is easier to break. And war makes people desperate. If one of the sons leaves for war, the ranch weakens physically. If both leave, Spencer stands alone again. Older, outnumbered, surrounded by men who want his land. The widow in this situation becomes more than a mystery woman. She becomes emotional support. Or possibly the spark that ignites further division. Did she ever expect to become part of a legacy family? Did she fall for Spencer, knowing he could never fully give his heart again? Or was it simply survival? Two people seeking comfort in a brutal world. The beauty of this storyline is that it does not need dramatic speeches. The tension lives in quiet moments. A look across the dinner table, a hesitation before saying son, a letter from overseas that changes everything. And then comes the breaking point, because war does not just test soldiers, it tests families. If tragedy strikes overseas, the ranch changes forever. If betrayal happens at home, the family fractures. If the widow's past resurfaces, Spencer may be forced to confront truths he has avoided for years. Yellowstone 1944 is not about easy answers. It is about emotional consequences. Spencer once fought lions in Africa. He survived gunfights and blizzards. But in 1944, his greatest battle may not be against a man with a weapon. It may be against the weight of his own decisions. And that is what makes this chapter dangerous. Because when a Dutton feels cornered, he does not retreat. He defends. And sometimes, defense looks a lot like destruction. While the Dutton family struggles with secrets at home, a different kind of enemy begins to rise outside the ranch gates. 1944 is not just a year of soldiers and sacrifice. It is a year of opportunity, especially for men who know how to turn chaos into profit. With so many young ranch hands leaving for war, Montana is stretched thin. Fields are harder to manage. Cattle shipments are delayed, supplies are limited. And when resources become scarce, powerful men step in with polished shoes and dangerous smiles. These are not gunmen on horseback. These are businessmen in suits. They come with contracts instead of rifles. They talk about progress instead of control. They promise modernization, rail expansion, military partnerships, and federal support. But beneath every offer is the same goal: land. And no land is more valuable than Yellowstone. The Dutton Ranch is not just property, it is a symbol, it is power. It is leverage. And in wartime America, land means influence. Beef feeds soldiers. Horses move supplies. Wide open space attracts federal attention. The ranch becomes strategically important, whether Spencer wants it to or not. One powerful industrial group begins circling quietly. They claim they want to help struggling ranchers survive wartime shortages. They offer loans, they offer protection, they offer partnership. But Spencer knows this game. He has seen men pretend to be friends before. He understands that control rarely comes through force first. It comes through dependency. If one neighboring ranch falls into debt and sells out, the pressure grows. If two sell, the Duttons become isolated. And isolation is dangerous. Spencer may not fully trust banks or politicians, but he understands strategy. He begins strengthening alliances with the few ranchers left who still believe in independence. He builds quiet loyalty. He reminds them that once land is sold, it never comes back. But unity is fragile in desperate times. Some families need money. Some fathers fear losing everything while their sons are overseas. Fear makes people practical. And practicality sometimes betrays tradition. At the same time, law enforcement becomes unpredictable. The local sheriff may not be as loyal to the Duttons as previous ones were. War has shifted priorities. Federal authority carries more weight. If outside investors bring federal contracts into Montana, they bring influence with them. Spencer finds himself fighting a new kind of war: paperwork, legal threats, strategic pressure. And yet, violence is never far away in Yellowstone. When cattle begin disappearing from smaller ranches, rumors spread. Is it simple theft or intimidation? Is someone sending a message? Spencer investigates quietly. He knows that fear spreads faster than fire. If the surrounding ranchers start believing Yellowstone cannot protect itself, they will look for new protection. Then something happens that forces Spencer's hand. A boundary dispute escalates. Not with shouting, with action. Fences are cut. Water access is blocked. And one night, a barn on a neighboring ranch burns under suspicious circumstances. No proof, no witnesses, just smoke rising against a Montana sky already darkened by war news. Spencer understands what this means. Someone is testing him. He does not react publicly. He does not accuse anyone in town. Instead, he sends a message of his own. Calm, controlled, unmistakable. The Duttons are still here. But this time, the fight is more complicated. Because if Spencer responds too aggressively, he risks federal attention. Wartime America does not tolerate internal instability easily. If the government sees Montana as disruptive to national supply chains, they could intervene. And federal intervention is the one enemy even the Duttons cannot overpower. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, tension between the sons grows quietly. One of them believes the real war is overseas. The other sees the war at home. If Spencer's firstborn prepares to enlist, he feels a sense of duty to country. He wants to honor his name through service. But the other son may feel his duty lies with the land, protecting Yellowstone from businessmen and hidden enemies. This difference in perspective creates silent distance between them. Are they fighting for the same future, or are they fighting for different versions of it? Elizabeth, if she has returned, sees the cracks forming. She understands legacy better than anyone. She knows what happens when pride goes unchecked. She tries to keep peace inside the house, while Spencer fights battles outside it. But even she may not know the full truth about the widow's place in Spencer's life. And that truth, when revealed, could weaken the family at the worst possible time. Because the industrial group circling Yellowstone is patient. They are not rushing. They are waiting for the perfect moment. When Spencer is distracted, when one son is overseas, when emotional fractures become visible, that is when they will make their final move. And unlike past enemies, these men do not need to draw blood. They just need signatures. Yellowstone 1944 raises the stakes in a different way. The danger is quieter, smarter, legal. But make no mistake, it is just as deadly. Because if the Duttons lose their land through contracts instead of bullets, the result is the same. The legacy ends. And Spencer Dutton did not survive Africa, grief, and decades of battle to lose his home to a man with a briefcase. The war overseas is loud. The war in Montana is silent. And silence in the Yellowstone universe has always been the most dangerous sound of all. As the war overseas reaches its most brutal phase, the emotional cost begins to land inside the walls of the Dutton home. Letters become lifelines. Every envelope carries hope and fear. If Spencer's son goes to war, the ranch changes overnight. The space at the dinner table feels larger. The silence stretches longer. Even the land feels heavier. Spencer reads every letter twice, sometimes 3 times, studying the handwriting as if it might reveal something hidden between the lines. At first, the letters are strong, confident, full of pride. His son writes about brotherhood, about purpose, about doing something that matters. He says he understands now what it means to carry the Dutton name. But slowly, the tone shifts. The words become shorter. The details become fewer. There are mentions of loss, of friends who didn't make it, of cold nights and louder mornings, of things he cannot fully describe. Spencer recognizes it immediately. War is changing his son, and there is nothing he can do to stop it. Back in Montana, the pressure continues to build. The businessmen circling Yellowstone make another move, a strategic one. They approach one of the neighboring ranches that Spencer once protected. This time, the offer is too good to refuse. Debt disappears, security increases. A future is guaranteed. One by one, alliances begin to fall. Spencer realizes he is not just protecting land anymore. He is protecting belief. The belief that independence still matters. The belief that the Dutton way is not outdated. But belief is fragile when families are scared. Inside the house, the tension between the 2 young men reaches its breaking point. If one stayed behind to help run the ranch while the other went to war, resentment quietly grows. The one at home feels overlooked. The one at war feels alone. And then comes the moment that changes everything. A telegram, short, formal, cold. There has been an incident overseas. The details are unclear, the outcome uncertain. For a brief period, the Dutton Ranch exists in complete emotional suspension. No one breathes normally. No one speaks freely. Even Spencer, who has faced death before, feels something close to helplessness. This is different from fighting your own battle. This is waiting for news you cannot control. When confirmation finally arrives, whether it is survival or tragedy, it reshapes the entire season. If his son survives but returns wounded, physically or emotionally, Yellowstone 1944 shifts into a story about broken warriors trying to live normal lives. A young Dutton coming home with scars that cannot be seen. Spencer forced to watch his child struggle with the same darkness he once carried. If the loss is permanent, the ranch changes forever. The weight of the Dutton name becomes heavier than ever. And the question of inheritance becomes urgent, because legacy cannot survive without heirs. In the middle of this emotional storm, the truth about the widow threatens to surface. Perhaps someone in town speaks carelessly, perhaps an old document resurfaces, or perhaps one of the sons discovers it on his own. The realization that Spencer had another child outside of marriage, that bloodline is more complicated than believed, sends shockwaves through the family. Not because of shame, but because of uncertainty. Who carries the true future of Yellowstone? Is it the son born from love and marriage, or the son born from circumstance and silence? Spencer, for the first time, may be forced to speak openly about his